All right, folks, welcome to SEP. Today we're just going to go over this AP student handout for the create task, which is the creation of your game or app as your final project that you're going to turn in. So this is linked in Classroom today, and we're going to just take a look at what some of these requirements are. And we'll go through this doc here together. All right, so basically when we start out saying programming is a collaborative and creative process, this is key because you can pick one partner to work with on your app or game. You don't have to do it by yourself, but you can if you want to. You will design and implement a program that might solve a problem, enable innovation, explore personal interests, or express creativity. So this could be a game or an app. You have to include the elements listed in the submission requirements below. So that's what we're going to go through. You're allowed to collaborate with a partner on the development of the program only. Written response and the video that you submit must be completed individually. So we're going to go over the written response part in the video after this, so you do that without any collaboration. Okay, so general requirements. Your final program code. Basically, you're going to take your code and either screen capture it or take code pictures and put them into a Google Doc and turn it into a PDF. And you're going to turn that in on the College Board website when it's due. You're going to make a short video. The video is only a minute or less, so it's very short, but it's just going to display your program running and some of the functionality that you created. And then finally, there's some written responses that they're going to ask you about that you are going to write about what you made. All right, let's look at that. The program code. So it says one PDF file that contains all your code, and you want to mark the following, and we're going to go over those things. And you'll notice on the right hand side there's some definitions of things that we've done in class, and we will go over these as well, just so you know exactly what they mean as a review. Okay, so in your program, you must include student-developed program code that contains instructions for input from one of the followings: the user, a device, online data stream, or a file. So in a game, the input would be from the user, right? So like the controls that you need to use. So that's got to be in your program code that you submit in the PDF, like what controls that the user uses to play the game. If you're designing an app that's pulling data from like a website or something, or asking data from a user, that's also user. So instructions for input, like how do you play your game or how do you use your app? At least one list or other collection type. Remember, we went over lists in Snap big time. So you need one list that represents a collection of data. So is it a list of characters in your game, a list of weapons in your game? Is it a list of names in an app, a list of locations, or something else in an app? So a list. It has to contain a list. At least one procedure that contributes to the program's intended purpose, where you have defined the procedure's name, the return type, or one or more parameters. So what these fancy words basically mean is like one basic algorithm or one bar of code that does something that contributes to the program's purpose. You're going to highlight that and kind of like talk about it. An algorithm that includes sequencing, like the order of operations. Why is that important? Selection, like building a list. And iteration, so how do things change as things go on. That is in the body of the selected procedure. We'll go over these as well. Calls to your student developed procedure. So this is a fancy way of saying, like, if in the game that we made, when you have the code that makes the player go left, up, down, left, and right, there's a call to that code when you press the up key because it runs that block. Instructions for output. So what do you get out of it, output-wise? So messages that come out of the game or things that happen as a result of what you do. And these are the things that you have to highlight. And we'll go over these again in class. We're just doing it, taking a look at it on the worksheet for the first time. Next, you're going to make a video. Each person needs to make their own little video. This could be a screen capture like what I'm doing right now on my computer, or you could use your phone. You're not allowed to collaborate on the video if you're working in partners. Each person has to turn in their own, and you have to talk about the input to your program, like what do you do with the program, what buttons do you press, at least one aspect of the functionality, so how a part of your program works, For example, in a game where you move up, down, left, and right, you can talk about the mechanics of pressing the up, down, left, and right button and what that code looks like. Output produced by your program, and that's it. Output is like messages that the user gets, results that happen as a result of things that happen in your game or app. You can't contain any distinguishing information about yourself, so don't show your picture of yourself in the video. Text captions are included, but I guess they don't want voice narration, so you don't want to talk about it. We'll talk about ways that you can get this done. They'll probably all be MP4s based on phones and stuff like that. No more than a minute link, so it's very short. And if it goes over 30 megabytes, I can tell you how to compress that. And then finally, the written responses. You guys are going to see these ahead of time, so you'll be able to write these ahead of time and have plenty of time to get them done. But basically, you're going to describe the overall purpose of what you made right here. And you want to be about 150 words or so, and you can always count your words in a Google Doc. Describe the functionality of the program that's demonstrated in the video. So what part of the program are you highlighting and what does it do? Describe the input and output of the program. So what keys do you press and what happens as a result of playing the game or using the app? Next, you want to capture and paste 2 program code segments that you developed that contain a list. They want to see the part that makes a list in your program. The first program code segment must show how data have been stored in the list. And then the second program code must show how the data in the list is being used, such as creating new data from the list. And we'll talk about this in class as well if you're confused about it. Then we're going to provide a written response. Identify the name of the list being used. Describe what the data in the list represents. Is it a list of names? Is it a list of items in a game, etc.? And explain how the selected list manages complexity in your program code by explaining why your program code could not be written if it didn't use the list. So if, for example, if you have a video game and you have items and you have an item inventory, you would need the list to keep track of the items that your character has in the game. Just an example, excuse me. Capture and paste 2 program code segments that contain a student-developed procedure and implements an algorithm. So this could basically be anything. Any piece of your game that does something, right? An algorithm. We have a bunch of them in the samples that we've created. The first program code, so remember we're getting 2 of them. So the first one should define the procedure's name, contain and uses 1 or more parameters that have an effect on the functionality, and implements an algorithm that includes sequencing, selection, and iteration. Remember, sequencing, order of operations. Selection, building things into a list, and iteration, changing those things and how things change over time. The second code segment must show where your student-developed procedure is being called in your program. So when does this algorithm that you highlighted get used? So if your algorithm is all about movement, when do we call that algorithm in the game? Then provide a written response that does both the following. Describe in general what the procedure does and how it contributes to the overall functionality of the program. So why do you have it there and what is it doing? And then talk about how it works. And just be detailed in how your algorithm works. And then finally, we want to talk about 2 calls to the procedure identified in response 3C. So back here in 3C, where we talked about these 2 algorithms, now we want to talk about when those algorithms are called. And in other words, when do you use those algorithms and why in your app or game? And describe what condition is being tested by each call to the procedure. So what that basically means is, if you're calling an algorithm and the algorithm is doing something, you're just talking about what that algorithm is doing and how the game is changed or how the app is changed by calling these 2 algorithms. And then what is the result and what actually happens in the game. Yeah, I guess that's it. Here's some is a little blurb on plagiarism here. Just don't copy anyone else's work. Make sure it's original work that you're building. And that's about it. We're going to go over this in class today as well, but I wanted to have this video up in case anybody missed it. All right, see ya.